Believe me, I actually don't want to talk about this either, but I really do feel like fiction has kind of dropped the ball when it comes to villains, because right now we have like all these villains who are sympathetic and complicated, and maybe they were the real victims all along, and we lost the plot here, y'all. We lost the plot here. Villains are supposed to be whatever you want them to be. As a guy, as whoever if you're writing a story, I'm not going to tell you how to write it, but villains aren't always supposed to be sympathetic. You're not supposed to always feel bad for the villain. You're not supposed to always root for the villain, which is why I 100% believe that we as a society, specifically in America, we need to have more white supremacist villains. We need to have more villains that are white supremacists. We need to have more villains that are like right wing sociopaths. We need more villains. We need more villains that are like some of the worst people that are actually like believably terrible. I'm talking like characters who done unspeakable things to their spouses or further into that. People who have done terrible things because they just wanted to do it, because we lost the plot when it comes to villains. And I say the best way to kind of get back into writing villains is to have them be white supremacists, because you can literally look into American history and look into world history and just see that white supremacy, not white people, are like the most villainous people ever. These are people who basically dedicated their entire life to making life as miserable as they can for people that they don't like, simply because they don't like them. That's it. Whether it's because of their skin color, their gender, their hair color, the way that they look, how tall they are, what language they're speaking, what God they pray to, how they look when they swim, whatever it may be. These people have basically said, I don't like that person and I'm going to hurt that person because I don't like them. And that person needs to be written as a villain. That's the villain that we need to start having. It's like this unsympathetic, unabashed, cruel sociopath who is not supposed to be liked or rooted for. And the reason why is because of the fact that, like, in real life, a lot of people don't want to say it because it's like, actually, fiction is little kid stuff. I outgrew that. No, you didn't. No, you did not. That's why we have drama series today. That's why we got movies now. The fact of the matter is that, like it or not, some people basically shape their morality based off of stories that they read, based off of like fiction that they partake in, based off of experiences that they don't believe that they'll ever have, but they would at least like to be able to see. If any, for example, right, everybody uses Terminator to justify why they're so scared of AI and robots and machines in general. It's like all of their fear is justified because of the Terminator. Terminator has become like their basic, what is it, their basic modus operandi as to why they do not like the idea of technology getting any more advanced than it already is. We even have something called the Asimov test, which is from the Isaac Asimov series. Like the writer Isaac Asimov, who is, what is he, like a writer of fiction, right? A writer of, I need to read some Asimov books. But what I'm saying is, is that, like, in some fashion, fiction actually motivates a lot of people's perspectives when it comes to real things. A lot of people find themselves sort of sympathizing with some of the sympathizing with bullies and mean people in real life because they sympathize with the villain in fiction, and sometimes vice versa. They like the idea of being able to say, oh, this being who is astounding cruelty is actually an excusable individual because they're just victims in a system that is like taking it out on them, and they're lashing out, and that's the only way that they can know. Sometimes a jerk is just a jerk. And what better way to write a jerk that's just being a jerk than them being a white supremacist? Because when you think of some of history's biggest jerks, look at white supremacists like Nathan Bedford Forrest, Adolf, the rest. Who's that dude? Who's that dude who attacked the Congo and took people's hands and ate them? Leopold II. You have like you have Francisco Pizarro, like all of these explorers that went to like other countries just to harass and terrorize the natives over there. Christopher Columbus, It's like you really. It's like we like these people like throughout history, white supremacy has basically just the Puritans. Well, how are the Puritans white supremacists? They hated women. Bigotry is white supremacy. Catch up. The fact of the matter is that like we have like a lot of people who have basically devoted their energy into making life miserable for other people simply based on bigoted views. And those bigoted views basically say, if there's not a white guy, we got to do something about it. But the fact of the matter, and it's like, we need that in fiction more. I remember once upon a time, every other villain was either Russian or German. And it was almost always because in context they were talking about, certain situations that was happening around that time, be it World War II or the Cold War. But the fact of the matter is that like, so for a long time in America, the universal bad guy was almost always the other N words from World War II and Russian people because of or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that like in the process of us taking attention and putting it on those guys, we basically ignored our own bad guys here in America today. And we've had more than our fair share. We've had a few. You know what I'm saying? Like, cause like, and the problem is that like, I feel like now is the time as any for us to start telling that story. And I feel like, and it's like, cause you got to really take into consideration. You got people right now who support white supremacy that don't know that they support white supremacy because they don't believe that white supremacy either A, exists, or B, is actually that bad. You know what I'm saying? So I really do feel like we do need to actually have, as a society, start telling that story and start showing people, hey, these guys were bad too. We had our fair share of villains too. Once again, like, let's never forget that Nat Turner literally was turned into grease. Let's never forget that Victorian people, this is in Europe by the way, Victorian people, the reason why there's very little mummies in Africa is because people ate them. European people ate them. And let's never forget that they were eating us in America too. Some of us were getting eaten or turned into shoe leather. Or turn into a whole bunch of other things. The fact of the matter is that, and that it was not just us, bro. They hated, bro. Like, if there's one thing that white supremacists in America hated more than black people, it was white women. Take a good look into how they treated white women; it will terrify you. But what I'm trying to bring up is that like, it's definitely high time for us to start. Like, we basically took a lot of time into basically saying the bad guys from World War II are the universal bad guys, or the bad guys from the Cold War are the universal bad guys. But we never exactly sat back and talked about the Civil War. We never exactly talked about the Revolutionary War. We never exactly talked about like segregation and all these other things. I think it's time for us to start having that conversation, and honestly, it would kind of make for a better story. Imagine being able to like see a story where a white supremacist gets beaten at the end. Wouldn't that make you happy? It'd make me happy. Fiction needs white supremacist villains. I hate how controversial that sounds, but I feel like it's necessary to say. Let's talk again later. Love and peace.